It stinks.
Okay, Simon, I'm going to be blown away by this one. Can we play a clip from Twisters?
It's Tyler Owens. Calls himself a tornado wrangler. If you feel it, chase it! I said if you feel it, chase it! All right, here we go.
I remember with tremendous fondness what a big deal the first Twister movie was. Helen Hunt had just won an Oscar, I think. No, I think the Oscar might have been after this, but it doesn't matter. We all adored her from Mad About You. Bill Paxton was a big deal. There was a real sense of excitement about the first Twister film because, not just the two great stars, but it was right in the middle of that early 90s period when a new wave of CGI was taking over cinema. You'd had Terminator 2, you had Twister, you're about to have Jurassic Park, and there was a whole new look and feel to cinema that was very exciting, that made these event movies, which makes me wonder what there is to be excited about in the new film, Twisters, which is in cinemas this week. The cast is certainly of note. Mr. It Guy at the moment, Glen Powell, plays this razzle-dazzle cowboy jock kind of guy who runs a YouTube channel of storm chasers. The film occasionally dips into high-def YouTube mode to sort of show the indication, give us some indication of what his videos look like on screen. Then you've got Daisy Edgar-Jones, I think that's her name, isn't it? Something like that. Mm-hmm. Who is kind of the it girl despite stumbling with that Crawdaddy film. She's the other big name in this. And Anthony Ramos, who was in West Side Story. So you've got this terrific cast up against these big special effects. But the plot in this one, which is about Daisy Edgar-Jones' character trying to come to terms with the fact that in a sequence we see at the start of the film, she loses 3 friends to the tornado, and she has to sort of come to terms with the guilt, both her obsession with this incredible weather pattern, but also the terrible guilt she feels. And that kind of defines her character for the whole film. There is no character to Glen Powell's performance. He is just the dude who starts to fall in love with her and blah, blah, and so on and so forth, all the machinations we go through. So it really is about the special effects. They're there.
Sorry, can I point out that doesn't sound entirely that different to the first film?
Well, that's an interesting point you make, because sometimes we get emails from the publicity team and say, hey, can you send us your thoughts having watched the film? You're one of the first in Australia to have seen it. Can you send us your thoughts? I wrote a quick review back to them saying, the characters in the plot are paper thin. They'd blow away in a slight breeze, let alone a tornado, but the stars are watchable and the effects are convincing. 3 out of 5, bracket. That's basically what I said about the first film too. So I don't think they've added anything new to this. It's directed by the young man who did Minari a couple of years ago, which was a very sweet drama, beautiful film about the South Korean immigrant experience in America and how they decide to move to the land to make a name for themselves and make a stake a claim for themselves, I should say. So I don't know what there was about Twister other than a big paycheck that probably brought him on board here. He works with the characters well. The special effects are handed over to the special effects guys and they deliver. This will provide a little bit of, oh, wow, look at that sort of cinema for the next couple of weeks until the next big Hollywood film comes along. But for everyone involved, it's a fairly standard sort of Hollywood summer blockbuster that I just don't think will be remembered as fondly as the first film was.
So the original film I've got incredible fondness for, even if I have a very strong memory of one of my life's greatest embarrassments happening straight after the movie. But we don't need to go into that here.
Was this the public defecation thing? I'm pretty sure this was the public defecation story.
No. I'm pretty sure I said it was one of my great embarrassments, Simon, and not proudest achievements. But let's move on. Look, here's the thing. The first film, I think, got by with incredibly strong casting, charismatic casting.
Yes.
So not only did you have the very charismatic leads in the way of Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton, but you also had just this amazing, great supporting cast. And when you watch it, you'll be like, wait a sec, they're in this movie? We're talking about people like Philip Seymour Hoffman, Alan Ruck, Sean Whalen. Okay, Sean Whalen might be a bit of a stretch.
Jamie Gertz was in there, bringing a lot of the humour. Lovely, yeah. And that's one of the things...
Sorry, an aside, Simon. Do
Yeah.
you know how incredibly wealthy Jamie Gertz is?
Yeah, she's married to some NFL guy or some sort of
Oh, like a
billionaire
team
in
owner.
the what? Sorry,
Like a team owner.
a team owner. Yeah,
Not
and yeah,
not
she's
like a
one of
player.
Hollywood's
Yeah.
wealthiest wags.
Mm.
But that points out
And she
there
hasn't got a
is
square to spare.
square to spare. No, she is Saturday night. So the fact that you point out all these great character actors that were literally in bit parts in the first Twister, that is sorely lacking from this film. There is not a skerrick of humour in this movie, where there was a real sense of fun and adventure about the first one, and that's certainly lacking from this second one. And I got to admit, I got a little bored in this one. When the special effects weren't making a lot of noise, I kind of sunk back in my seat a bit and maybe even nodded off once or twice, which might be on me. It was a long day, but it was also a little bit on the film.
Look, I'm going to make an effort to go and see this one because the first one is very dear to my heart, so I'm keen to at least see what they've done with it. And also, I'm kind of up for a big weather movie. I kind of like what you were saying, and I don't know how much they've actually delivered on this, but I like the idea of a film about weather chasers having that user-generated content element to it, where they're out there filming it as part of a YouTube channel or whatever. Because if you're after a way of what do you do in 2024 to make Twisters relevant, like that's it. Back
Sure.
in 1996, when the first film was released, it was very much about weather chasers, and it was on that cusp of like the Weather Channel being a thing. But there wasn't really like a media aspect to the idea of it. It was really just because I think the Bill Paxton character was like a weather presenter. Okay,
Yeah.
but outside of that, it was scientists who were chasing after these storm patterns with the
Very
idea
true.
of developing the science to be able to do better predictions of when these events are going to take place. But if you're going to do it in a modern era, I think you have to bring that media element into it, and the fact that people are probably out there risking their lives to be able to film like amazing footage to be able to get the likes, the hits. So
Can
to
I
me, like that's what's contemporary about it.
Can I just point out, and this is a little bit of a spoiler alert, so if you don't want a bit of a gag ruined for you, one of the big laughs in the first film was it's a cow. I think it's the same cow. Anyone who's seen Twister will remember that scene. Not a mention of a cow in this film. They don't even reference it, which I think is a missed opportunity. There should be more cow humour, particularly sort of airborne cows in movies is a missed opportunity. But I
Maybe they just
digress.
couldn't
What are we
strike a deal to
reviewing
get
next?
it back.
Really should. So Twisters out through Universal in cinemas everywhere this week. Let's move on.
Okay, Simon, debuting this week on Apple TV Plus, it is the new Rashida Jones. I guess it's a comedy. It's called Sunny.
Mrs. Sakamoto, I'm afraid we have bad news.
My family was in a plane crash. Things have been, weird. Can I help you?
I have a gift.
Hajimemashite, Suzy-san. I'm Sunny. Bring it in.
Okay.
Robots can be of great comfort.
I don't want a robot. I hate robots.
Sunny was created by your husband.
I'm confused. Masa works in refrigerators.
You are also Laugh Riot.
Okay, Simon, this one, it is a woman living in Kyoto, played by Rashida Jones. She plays the character Suzy Sakamoto.
Nice.
She is a wife, she's a mother, and as the series opens, we learn that she has recently lost the husband and son in her life because there's been a plane accident, and they are gone. We pick this up just in the days following the accident, and she is, as you'd understand, like deeply bereft and trying to deal with it. She's a very strong person, you get the sense, but, this is her world and it's been taken from her. She's dealing with that. She's got her mother-in-law who, she's very, I guess, very traditionally sort of Japanese, very stoic, but as you start to see from the second episode onwards, maybe not necessarily quite feeling mourning in the same way that Suzy is. Anyway, Suzy is walking the streets one night, ends up she's been to a bar, she's trying to process her emotions over it all. She gets home to find that this guy that her husband Masa used to be working with, named Yuki Tanaka, he's standing outside the house and is like, hey, your husband wanted you to have this. Anyway, he drops off this large box into her little house. She opens up the box and there is I'm trying to remember what the actual phrase is in it. I'm going to call it like a human bot. Okay, and it's like a robot that's made for domestic duties within the household. Now, when you've seen her in the opening sequences, there are robots doing like menial tasks like, delivering food to people and picking up garbage and whatnot. But the first time that we see this really integrated in someone's day-to-day life is this robot that's been delivered. She's got an immediate dislike towards it. She doesn't really want this intrusive thing in her household. And increasingly, it seems as though her husband, Massa, may have been involved in some stuff with the robots that is maybe not necessarily what it says on the label.
Oh, interesting.
And so that's an interesting murder mystery conceit, possibly. I'm not necessarily saying that the plane crash was a result of this, but also I'm not saying that either.
Everything about this, I'm quite excited by the concept of this. This sounds like something that it's got robots, it's got Rashida Jones set in beautiful Japan. Why isn't this a bigger deal than it should be? I'm sort of on board with this so far.
I mean, why isn't it a bigger deal? It's because it's on Apple TV Plus, and the viewership just isn't there for it. But broadly, like, the real question to ask here for fans of a lot of Apple TV Plus content, which I am, the question is, does this show necessarily work? Because there's one very big red flag on it, and that's Rashida Jones. Now, I like Rashida Jones, but also I think Rashida Jones can offer me the worst thing about anything that she's in. Okay? Like, probably the most egregious appearance of her in something was that movie with Bill Murray, On the Rocks. And
you are in a feisty mood today, Dan Barrett. You're coming down on the Comic-Cons. Now you're attacking Rashida Jones. I'm not buying it. I think she's an asset to anything. But go ahead, make your point.
I don't know. I just don't think she is. But she's actually really quite good in this. I really rather enjoyed it. I guess maybe the only problem this series has, is they've got this character, Sunny, who's the robot that gets introduced into her house. And the animation around the robot and some of the voice production around it, it feels like it's sort of layered on top of an entirely different program. The actual Sunny character of the robot, and she's not much of a character, she's programmed, but she's programmed to be lively. It feels just a little bit too lively. And in conversations where you see this robot in the room talking to Rashida Jones's character, Susie, it feels as though Susie's being captured in real life and Sunny is obviously at voiceover work. And it really takes away from what the show is really quite good at in being incredibly grounded and very sort of tangible. Like, they are in Tokyo. Sorry, not Tokyo. They're in Kyoto. And it feels and looks like Kyoto. She walks down the streets and it feels like the streets that I've walked down in Kyoto. Like, it really feels authentic. And then this robot, who's the central conceit to the series, just kind of ruins the whole thing, and it's really disappointing. Now, I will say, I'm 2 episodes in. I don't want to talk too much about what happens in episode 2, but you get enough from episode 1 to know that there's definitely some shady, murderous activity that's taking place with these robots. They're not to be trusted, and it is a great entry point to a series, and I'm very excited to see this through. I've only seen the first 2 episodes, which is what debuted on Wednesday in Australia, or globally, actually. But yeah, strap yourself in. I think it's going to be an interesting one, if not maybe possibly just a little disappointing because of the creative choices made around Sunny.
I've heard some reports that the voice that they use for the robot is actually the voice of Alf from the old TV series. Is that true?
No, in no way is that possibly true, Simon.
Okay,
I know you're trying to be funny there, but
misinformation.
Look, I mean, we've had some sad news about Alf this week, so maybe sort of stop with the Alf jokes.
Yeah, the young boy who played the young boy in the series is passed away at a very young age. So it's very sad.
Benji Gregory. I mean, young age. He was middle-aged. But
46.
Yeah, Benji...
Terrible
Benji Gregory did
circumstances
pass away. Yeah.
Hey, keep it light. All right, move on. What are we talking about next?
Look, I mean, sorry, first of all, let's get some facts out there as well. Paul Fresco was the creator of Alf and also provided the voice of Alf. Whereas the voice here is a woman by the name of Joanna Sotomura. Okay. So, very different. Yeah.
I'm keen to watch this. I'm going to have a look at this. I'm a Rashida Jones. I'm a robot guy. I love Japan. Everything about it. And you and I have spoken at length about the quality that is Apple TV, yet somehow... There's something that doesn't always grab you about Apple series. They can be a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? chilly or a little bit sort of. So if this one has a little bit of warmth, I'll be happy for it. But we'll see.
No, this is a very chilly show, but at the same time, I think it's a very watchable show. I think you're probably going to quite like it. I think there's a lot going for it. It's just let down by this one very central aspect of the series that it just, I don't know, it just left such a cold feeling in my mouth. But anyway, we move on to your next review, which is Fly Me to the Moon, we're going to leave with me doing my Alf impersonation of Alf laughing. Okay, let me warm up the vocal cords here.
This will be good.
Ha!
Hey, Joe. Eating cold? Miss, you're on fire.
Very original. No, I do not want to stop, drop, and roll with you.
No, your book is on fire.
Oh my God.
Alcohol and flames, they like each other. Cold days.
Kelly Jones.
Speaking of watchable, boy, Scarlett Johansson and Channing Tatum together in a early 60s set romantic comedy called Fly Me to the Moon is about as watchable as you'll get in the cinemas this week. She plays a marketing guru called Kelly Jones, who is brought on board by Woody Harrelson to try to help sell the floundering public opinion of the space mission, the Apollo mission. Now, this certainly sets offside the launch director, Cole Davis, played by a very handsome Channing Tatum. It's already a very difficult task for him to try to make this all work in technical terms, but to have a marketing woman always at his back trying to get the right angle or the right pitch or the right kind of sales tool in place to sell it to the American public is in itself a hassle. What, of course, happens in true romantic comedy style, they start to find first a shared vision for the Apollo mission and then a long-term vision for themselves as well. They make a lovely on-screen couple, Channing and Scarlett. She has never looked more glowing in a film, and he... I've always enjoyed Channing Tatum. He's never really taken himself very seriously on screen. He's done some really fine work, but he's always kind of goofy and kind of fun and kind of in on his own joke. In this one, he plays a really well-rounded, mature character who fits in perfectly well with the story and certainly fits in perfectly well with his co-star. They share some lovely moments together. This one's directed by a guy called Greg Berlanti, whose name I knew, and then when I looked at his...
Dude.
Well, I know of him. Well, I know of him from I Love You, Simon, or Love, Simon, the movie that he made a couple of years ago that was then made into the TV series, a film which I really, really loved. So he has a very old-school touch with the way he tells his story and with the way he hits the romantic comedy beats. For a romantic comedy to work, it's right there in the genre. The romance has got to be authentic, and there's got to be legitimate character-driven laughs that come out of the meeting of these two romantic minds. And in this film, he does all of that really, really well. And at times it's quite convoluted because there's a subplot about faking the moon landing and about making sure that the American public sees a moon landing, even if things go terribly wrong, which they had done prior to this. So they create this fake moon landing experience with Jim Rash playing a very funny sort of Kubrick-like stand-in. I got to say, nobody was more surprised at how much I was totally charmed and warmed by this movie. It is a really old-school sort of romantic comedy, a big-screen romantic comedy, which I thoroughly fell in love with. And I've got to admit, even at one point, I shed a little tear. There's a terrific scene with Scarlett Johansson reminiscing about the people she met on the launch mission. And it brought an absolute tear to my eye. This moon footage, some of which is reconstituted from the IMAX documentary from a few years back, is integrated beautifully. Fashions are great. Support cast is wonderful. I loved Fly Me to the Moon. Don't wait for this to come to Apple TV in a few weeks. Get out and see it on the big screen.
Okay, a more enthusiastic review than I think I've heard anywhere else. But
I was surprised because I had heard, I read a couple of good reviews and I thought, because I was very close to bailing on this screening and not going the other night, a very cold Sydney night. But I'd had the day off work. I thought, no, I'm going to go in and have a hamburger and go and watch this movie. And I was thoroughly, thoroughly charmed by it.
Yeah, look, I'm pretty keen to see it. I'm also keen to know, what was the burger?
It was one of the Angus burgers from Hungry Jack's, I think it was. Yeah, one of the. So it was delicious and good chips too. But I drank the Coke too quickly, so I felt a bit sick. But anyway, I digress. That's not important right now.
Well, it's important to me. Like, Sydney is not short of some very good quality, like, delicious burgers, and you went to Hungry Jack's. But
well, I was right near the cinema. I was going to get sushi, but I had sushi for lunch the other day. And anyway,
you had the day off. You had plenty of time to go and get a delicious burger from somewhere a bit more reputable. Anyway, Simon, that is enough. Look, Fly Me to the Moon from Greg Berlanti, only one of TV's biggest mega producers from the last 30-odd years.
Yeah.
He's a pretty big
What did he
deal,
do?
Simon.
Give me a name. Drop a name on me. What are one of his big series? I know him from his movies, and his movies I've loved.
Well, look, he's made one of the worst movies that I've ever seen in my life, which is the Green Lantern movie from back in the day.
Yes, he wrote that. Yes.
Yeah. Awful.
Yeah.
He didn't write that one, but he's the co-writer on it. Where he found his real success was all those DC superhero TV shows that clogged up the CW for a bunch of years. It was him producing all of those. He was bringing in so much money that he has this overall deal with Warner Brothers that just gave him like endless money. But if you saw shows like Arrow or The Flash or Legends of Tomorrow or what else is there? The Superman and Lois, which is still on the air. Like any of those programs, that all comes under that Berlanti banner, along with a bunch of other TV shows and movies.
He is a natural big screen director. This felt very much like an old school drama, sort of romantic comedy drama that hits all the right beats. So yes, I loved Fly Me to the Moon, and I'm surprised how much I did.
Everwood, that was one of his big shows.
Which one?
But anyway, Everwood. Simon, you need to have been a teenage girl in like the early 2000s. Let's move on. Simon, we do a segment every week called The Intermission.